6 foot. Right, we're back on. Sorry. It's James's fault. He's got the suntan lotion in the keyboard, and it's just messing with the audio. So if you think about what ball below the feet lie does, it's creating more force away from you. So as I said, it topples you more onto the toes of your feet. Then people get a bit flat-footed, and your hands get a bit more active. So that's, you know, when you're thinking about sloping lies, always think about the direction the force is pulling you in, and you're trying to oppose that. Hope that helps. So Peter Kendall, 1946. Hi guys, when I had my irons fitting with Simon, you had a look at my Rogue driver. How much better are the new drivers with dispersion than my driver?
So I think there's definitely, I mean, ball speed out the middle, you're not really going to see a difference. They're always going to claim they can get more ball speed, but right out the middle of the face, it's very limited. Across the face, off centre, yes, there's a bit more consistency of ball speed and potentially a better regulated spin. And you know, we've just hit in the last couple of weeks a couple of the heads coming out next year, and that's certainly where there appears to be a gain coming is against off-centre spin consistency. That's what I've seen from the next batch of drive heads coming. So yeah, that's going to reduce a bit of gearing, and it's going to reduce sort of out the toe, a bit of knuckling and a bit of flaring up out the heel. So I think next year that should definitely see a better consistency of performance for you.
Kev T asks, good evening, Simon. What are the advantages, if any, of a KBS Tour Light shaft?
So KBS Tour Light is the regulars 95 grams, stiff 100 and X 105. So they're in that kind of, obviously 95 to 105 gram weight, which is sort of lighter side of mid, but they're very evenly balanced. They're not very tip heavy, whereas if you go into a Dynamic Gold 95, that's very bottom end heavy. And so that can make the clubhead get a little bit out of control, whereas for some players, whereas the Tour Light allows you to be a little quieter through the ball, collect it, not have to fetch the clubhead at it. Bit of tip response, a little bit of a higher flight, but just a very evenly weighted shaft at that 95, 100 gram weight.
Very good. Noel, 1988. Evening, gents. Ping drivers with the max in the 430 and the 440 in a better spin window than the likes of the 400. How close are we to seeing Ping make a low spin max head for a forgiving LST?
I only made that funny noise because I've seen what's coming next year. Very close. It's not going to be, you're unlikely to ever see an LST spin with a max forgiveness, because actually by moving the weight back in the head that much, it makes it higher spin. Not always, but in terms of prioritizing forgiveness, you tend to give up a little bit on ball speed, a little bit on spin. It's possible to get both, but it's difficult and probably very expensive. However, I think next year's Ping driver launch you might find quite interesting. Allegedly.
Perod Mark 7987. I'm not going to try and pronounce the rest of that. I had a go and I failed miserably. Good evening. Angle of attack explaining in driver swings. Stiff but softer down and softer butt and stiffer tip. What suits who? Thanks for the answers.
Was there a bit about angle of attack?
Yeah, angle of attack. Angle of attack explaining in driver swings. Stiff butt, softer down.
Tip, I guess.
Softer butt and stiffer tip. What suits who?
So I'll do the shaft profiles first. In the main, if you're someone who loads the handle, who makes kind of a strong change of direction, you're putting more stress on the grip end of the shaft. So a stiffer butt section in principle is going to mean a bit more consistency to the way the shaft loads. And then a softer butt section, if you require to change the direction and a more gradual build of speed, then a softer grip end can basically deal with that load a little bit more, and you get a little bit less variation in terms of the way the shaft moves. If you have a soft grip and a strong acceleration, then you get a bit more deflection. Ultimately then, soft tip or stiff tip is whether you want a bit more kick and a bit more spin, or a bit less kick and a bit less spin. Tighter feel for the stiffer tip, softer feel for the softer tip. But all that is worth nothing if it's the wrong weight and doesn't suit the way you swing. So it's a mixture of feel and your technique. In terms of angle of attack, upward, positive angle of attack means the club is tracking upwards through the back of the ball. The low point's before the ball and it's sweeping up on it. And the negative angle of attack means it's coming down at impact. You haven't got to be 4 degrees up to get the best out of a drive. You can get lots of performance and consistency being neutral to slightly down. And if your swing profile is more of a squeeze and you try and hit up on it too much, you can ruin your driving. So it's a case of working out how you swing. So I'm a couple of degrees up, but if I try and take it too much, I drop underneath, I flip it left. So there are no magic numbers, but you don't want to be heavily down with the driver.
It's also important to recognise that you can be up with forward shaft lean, and you can be up with positive shaft lean. So you could have 2 people that are hitting up on the ball 5 degrees, one with forward shaft lean rising up, one with negative shaft lean rising up, and they could produce completely different dynamic loft angles. So just because you're hitting up doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to add loft. So that's an important factor to it.
Case in point, it's the two of us.
Yeah,
very similar club speeds, very similar angle attacks.
Absolutely.
You play an 11 degree head, I play an 8 degree head.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Jason, Robbo asks, hi Simon, what current hybrid models are on the lower side of launch and spin this year?
Well, lower side of launch and spin. A launch was the TaylorMades are quite strong. Not crazy strong on low on spin, but stronger on launch. You can definitely get the Callaway's to launch low. The standard model Elite definitely low spin, kind of more mid launch. Interesting enough, the GT3, the Titleist, is lower launch but more moderate spin, so they've actually brought a bit of spin up on that. So if you're looking for low launch, low spin, if you want low spin, the Ping in a 17 degree G440, that's going to have no spin on it at all. And if you're going down in loft, it launches, but if you're at that loft, it's not going to launch that high. So if you're wanting low spin, G440 in a 17 degree is a great one.
Jason Owen, Fab Show lads, thank you Jason. As winter is upon us and getting colder, what allowances and distance does the effects of the winter affect the golf ball in flight and distance? Well, funnily you say, I did a test years ago down at, I think it was Gasp at the time. And at the time it was no difference really in temperature. The biggest difference is you. You move slower in the cold than the heat. The ball is going to roll less, obviously, in the winter. So in terms of distance change, I think it's different for everyone. Some people are more flexible, again, younger, more flexible, more dynamic in the winter than you might be as a difference change for a young guy and an old guy in the winter to the summer. So it's more about how well your body is acquainted to the cold rather than really the golf ball and what the drop-off is in clubhead speed in the winter. Because if you went out on the range in the summer with a 6-iron and a TrackMan and measured your club speed and then went to the same range 6 months on when it's 2 degrees, I reckon your clubhead speed would be down 5-6 miles an hour. And it's not because it's anything other than you being colder. So that's really what you've got to work out rather than what does the ball do, because the reality is the ball doesn't really do too much different.
Yeah, we've done a couple of videos on it and done one with a ball, put it in the fridge, and then heat one in boiling water, and actually just the ball temperature was a few yards, it wasn't much, and actually using the temperature gauges on the TrackMan where they've got hundreds of thousands of shots worth of data. I think it's, if you're going from, we're going to use Celsius, if you're going from 20 degrees to 5 degrees, it's only about 5 or 6 yards, if that, 4 or 5 yards. But we also did one where we added layers of clothes, and over 2 layers, every layer of clothes was about 1.5 miles club speed. So if you're in winter, you've got thermals on it, that's got to be factored in. But exactly as Stuart said, you're just not as flexible. You can't move as far and as fast. So the biggest change is this bit and club speed.
Think about when you go in the gym, right? You warm up for a reason. Become more dynamic and stronger. So Jason Owen, 8193, Fab Show lads, I've just asked that question. Sound stopped. Yes, thank you. Hopefully we can all hear now. Sorry about that. Simon, good morning from Australia. Looking forward to the DP Tour swinging by in a few weeks at Royal Melbourne. Love that golf course. If high launch, low spin is the holy grail, why don't we see more 12-degree low spin drivers on the market?
So it is, but we all get there different ways, or certainly from a driver point of view. And if I were to use a 12-degree driver, it might still be low spin, but I'm still going to launch it at 15, 16 degrees, and then actually it's then coming down too steep to get maximum yardage. So if there was no spin on the ball, you'd want sort of 40, 45 degrees land angle like a cannon, the parabola flight. But there's always some spin on the ball. So depending on the player, as we said earlier, you can get totally different impact dynamics. And one player's still going to need an 8-degree driver, and one will need a 15-degree driver. And at different speeds as well. So there are lots of variables within it. And depending on your club speed and your delivery, there are different optimum launches and spins. So it's just not, sadly, well, actually, I'm quite glad it's not as simple as that. I'll be out of a job. Yeah.
Until TrackMan reads the grip, we'll get. You're not going to get a true reflection on how big a difference the grip track has on dynamic loft. Once you read the grip track, everything will change, but I can't see that happening anytime soon. Papa B, hello young men. 2 questions, greedy, but it's okay, it's okay. Would it make sense to go weaker flex shaft for winter weather? And Stuart, are there any swing changes that can help adjust to extra layers of clothing your aces?
You can find an argument definitely if you get big variables in temperature, like we do here, but other places get bigger variables than we do. You could certainly make an argument to have a winter set that was a few grams lighter. Flex, other than feel, you're not gonna make a big enough change to see a really tangible difference on course. But you could certainly make an argument for a set that's 5 grams lighter for winter.
No swing changes. All I would say is that just practice in more layers. If you go down the range and you're warmed up, or should I say when you're cold, just put even more layers on and get used to it and hold those layers on. Getting used to, it's like getting used to playing golf in a rain jacket. You know, Sandy Lowell loved it. I mean, to think unzipped and flapping around Sandy Lowell is crazy. Yeah. But it's because of what he was used to doing, because he's from Scotland and he's practiced a lot in the rain and he just got used to it. So I would say, rather than changing your swing, just get used to the extra layers. That would be a better way to go.
And just accept the ball's going less far.
Yeah, exactly right, exactly right.
4-way stretch material. What, Sandy Lowell's old cagoule? That definitely had no stretch in it at all.
Ed Martin PGA asks, Ventus Blue 6S versus an AD-DI 6S. Can you explain the different benefits, please?
So the Velocore material in the Ventus is designed to play very, very stout, stop the shaft squashing and ovaling, but to be very, very stable in the tip section. So it's a low spin model, but it's designed around minimizing dispersion ultimately, but it's a stiffer profile in the middle to lower sections, very stable tip section. The DI is a little bit more tip heavy versus the second generation Ventus, but the DI is much softer in the middle. So as a shaft, it's going to kind of give that feeling of loading and kicking a little bit more. Principal launch is a little bit higher. So for somebody who doesn't work the shaft as hard, it's likely to feel a bit more comfortable. Whereas for someone who kind of works harder, wants to feel a more stable contact and bring the top of the flight down, Ventus Blue will do that more than the DI6.
Just been pointed in the direction of a question. Have I, which one is it? And GS Golfer. CS Golfer. Oh, CS Golfer. I'm looking, oh yes, sorry, my apologies. I'm looking to get my 13-year-old a set of second-hand clubs to progress from a single iron to learn with his let me start that again. I'm looking to get my 13-year-old a set of second-hand clubs to progress from a single iron to learn with. Sorry, he's 5'11". What type of shafts would you recommend? Lighter, softer, flex? Question mark.
I mean, ultimately, you can be 5'11" and having just grown and not be very strong, and you can be 5'11" and I think he said he's 13. So chances are he's long-limbed and not that strong yet. So actually, going heavier will probably just make it hard work. So I'd err away from going too heavy. Obviously, I haven't seen anything about your son, so I don't know what he's actually like, how athletic he is. But certainly at the moment, erring, not going too heavy will make them more playable and easier to get going with the game. But at that kind of age, he's going to be strengthening pretty quickly, and if the more he starts to get into it, he could develop out of those quite quickly. But the problem is, if you then try and make them last too long, it makes the initial period really hard work, because they're just very hard work to time. So it's an interesting. I'd probably go for something in around 100, 110 grams steel. But beyond that, I can't really, unfortunately, I can't really advise any further. Definitely don't go shorter than the standard. But I think, yeah, you should be pretty safe as a kind of start point there. You'd have realistically a year or so comfortable use out of them. But I think any lighter than that, you're likely to be out of them in no time at all. Any heavier, they could just be brutally hard work.
LBNEC 11, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Hey guys, what are the main differences between X100 and C-Taper 130X?
They're both heavy. They're both in the 130 odd gram area. Both structurally very stable, but they swing very differently. The Dynamic Gold, the X100, is very evenly weighted. It's not too harsh in the midsection, stable in the tip, but it's not a dead shaft, it's just a lot of weight. C-Taper 130 is very tip stiff, so it swings more bottom end heavy. So it swings heavier than the Dynamic Gold because it makes the swing weight heavier, and generally suits someone who kind of pulls on the handle or kind of hits harder with the hands, in terms of has a bit more of an aggressive move through the ball with the hands. So you're creating a little bit more of a drop in, whereas a Dynamic Gold, it's a lot of weight, but it's actually much more evenly distributed through the shaft and doesn't feel quite as stiff.
Simon Muggleton. Evening, guys.
Oh, sound like Professor Snape for a minute there.
Yes, I've just missed someone out. We'll go
Potter.
back. PM Portella, how important is a shaft on wedges? Gap to lob, question mark. Are we really swing at max speed that flex makes a difference?
So the answer to the latter one is yes and no. No from a point of, are you going to get lots of kick and lots of spin? You're not going to get that, but it can affect feel quite a lot. And this is the one bit of the bag in particular where you want to get a bit of feedback. If a shaft's too harsh, then you don't get any sense of, well, you can lose a sense of where the head is. But just like it is in the rest of the bag, the balance is key. It almost even more key, one could argue, with a wedge, where if something goes wrong from short range, then there's no time to save it. So what we're really looking for is as with the full swings, we want the club to arrive with you so that you're in control of the club head, you're in control of low point. So
don't practice that first one too often, by the way.
No, yeah, the handle forward and then the dig. That's my winter speciality on that. But yeah, the shaft is really important for control, but you don't want to lose feel for the club, ideally, if you can help it.
Yeah, nice answer. Simon Muggleton, evening guys. Wanting to get my Mizuno 921 forged irons loft and lies checked. With next few months hitting in ranges and off mats, would end of March be a good time? What is the most common time?
I'd say get them checked before you start practicing on the mats, and then, yeah, depending on how close you are to someone that can give them the once over. If you're someone that does practice a lot, then do it a couple of times. You know, these mats are different. You've got that much pile and then of kind of actual kind of mat and then a little bit of base, whereas most of the other way around, where you've got that much base and a bit of felt on the top. Those will bounce if they've got a soft material as you do, those will bounce the loft and lies out. So if you're hitting a couple of times a week off them, then go somewhere once a month. You know, if you practice with particular clubs a lot, then just make sure they're not shifting out too much.
We've got lovely piles.
We do, yes.
In our mats.
You won't hear that said too often.
Kevin Phillips, can you compare the profile and counterbalance part of a 1K Orange Nemesis Sinister CB? Thank you.
Righty-hoo. I'm assuming you mean hitting, but
yeah, I assume so. Morning from New Zealand. Oh, lucky man. Looking to add a 7-wood to my bag. Like the feel of the hazardous blue RDX in a 3-wood. Thanks to PG. Tough to find 80 grams here.
Yeah.
So wondering if you could recommend some similar shafts to try.
Yeah, so speaking of counterbalanced, the hazardous blue is a higher balance shaft. In an 80 gram, you'd have potentially something like the Sinister CB in the 75. Does it got the hazardous blue 70?
Let me just look. Stand by, caller. Stand by. The counterbalance amount of the 1K orange.
Oh, with that latest question with the hazardous blue.
Sorry.
Is there a weight or is there?
Evening, guys. Want to hang on? I'm confused where we are now.
Yeah.
No,
okay.
There we go.
So if no reference to weight, then so the hazardous blue is still quite a stable feeling shaft. The hazardous shafts generally aren't the most responsive, or certainly of that era. Potentially something like the Sinister CB would be quite similar. They weren't as counterbalanced as something like the Tensei Orange or the Nemesis. So yeah, let me think with the blue. Of the current ones, yeah, actually that Sinister CB, it's not as heavily counterweighted, which feeds into the answer we're going to give on this question. So that would probably be one of the closest ones to it. But yeah, unfortunately, they're pretty few and far between, those hazardous blues in an 80.
Like rocking horse poop.
Yes, that they most certainly are.
Haven't seen much of that around these days.
So we've got Tensei 1K Orange, the 60 and all of these. So this one's at C9 swing weight. So what I'll do is I'll switch them, I'll give you the swing weight adjustment for each one. The Tensei Orange low spin profile, pretty stout tip, one that has been used quite extensively out on tour. Not too harsh in the handle end. Just really good materials and the progression to the 1K. It's been some stalwart in the line. This is not this. I play the opposite. I play tip bounce, so I've got to deaden my hands for these. But if we're looking at how they perform, we've got them in the GT3. Yeah, so for me, I just lose the bottom end on it. So hence I get a little bit flicky at it, but actually still quite a stable lower half. So you get a bit of feedback from the handle end, but quite a tight tip section to it. And so that was at C9. If I switch to the Nemesis, which is one of the more counterbalanced shafts, the Nemesis is a softer profile. So definitely something you're going to see a little bit more responsiveness, get a little bit more kick out of. In principle, should flight a little bit higher. So switching that over, we go from C9 to C6.5. So really heavily counterbalanced shaft there. So if you're really looking to get the bounce point up and make it as easy as possible to get that toe end through, it's an interesting one. A lot of the tour guys talk about using counterbalance to avoid going left. It varies a bit on the player, but I would always use it to make it easier to collect the club through. So what they then tend to do is weight the head up to maximise in principle momentum, but that can create a bit of a detachment to the club head. So, but yeah, this is C6.
So players are starting to put weight up the grip end.
So it's one of these where, chatting to the guys at Titleist in the tour van, they almost start about go as counterbalanced as possible to get as much speed as possible, but then use as heavy a head as possible to maximise energy transfer, which I will call it an interesting principle. It's not one that I would go to for a lot of amateurs, because what can happen if you do that, like for me, if I do that, I need head weight, but I need it in the bottom half of the shaft. Otherwise it gets lead ball at the end of a piece of string, gets detached. And I think if you're really good and really strong, that can work, but it's as a principle to kind of start from, and that is something they've described as the way they start their fittings from. That's the process they go down. It's a little bit one size fits all for me.
Right.
So this one down at C6, more counterbalance there. But
so this is more counterbalanced
than the Tensei, yeah. Really kind of as counterbalanced as you get, really, in shafts.
Interesting.
So
because it's got more weight at this end.
Proportionately, yeah, more handle weight.
Right,
yeah.
right. Interesting.
but a more responsive feel as well. And then you go into something like Sinister CB, which is again another VA composite shaft. And bear in mind the Sinister model, which is the one that I play, which is that one, is quite a tip-weighted shaft. So the Sinister is designed around both the CB and the standard one is designed around a lower flight. And this one, so we've gone from C9 to C6 and then back up to C8.5. So a similar kind of balance profile to the Tensei. Pickup's a little bit heavier than the Tensei in terms of dead weight. But a little bit more of a solid feel to that, slightly more stout handle end. And so coming from the Nemesis going back to this is definitely a little bit more to hit against with that one and a more solid feel.
Very good. Nicely done.
But all great quality shafts.
CB Golf 94 responded to Ed Martin PGA about the two shafts. He said mid-launch, mid-spin, high launch, low spin to the differences.
The theory, that's great. The player will override it. So just because they say that about a shaft, the Ventus Red is talked about as being a mid-spin shaft. Relative to the other Ventuses, it is, but relative to other shafts, it's actually quite a low spin shaft. So view them as a kind of a as a principle from a design standpoint, but actually one model's sort of mid-launch, mid-spin could actually be low spin relative to another model. It's very much categorizing them. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to see lots more spin in one shaft than the other.
Stephen Forge 89. Hi guys, I seem to have a habit of catching my driver low on the face. I hit up 1 or 2 degrees. Shaft is Denali Red 6.0 in a G440. Could a stronger tipped shaft move the strike up? Swings at 104 miles an hour.
Highly unlikely and to be bend profile. Simply because what you're not going to do is you're not going to see it change how the shaft kind of loads and droops enough to noticeably change the strike point. Chances are it's either the wrong weight or balance or length for you, which is affecting your ability to kind of stay in posture or to control strike point through the ball. But it's highly unlikely to be bend profile on its own.
Simon Muggleton is being awfully greedy as well. I'm going with the Thians. So Simon Muggleton, as I was just about to say, has been greedy, asking a second question, but we like greed here. After replacement for 5-iron, after a replacement for 5-iron with a 5-6 hybrid that launches high and spins high, looking at the 2025 Wilson and Mizuno ST230 Max, any others to test?
Yeah, in terms of sort of high launch and spin, depending on how high, GT1, it's a bit like a mini fairway wood, but we've not had anything be as good for getting launch up and spin up as that head. And they do it in a 23 and 26 degree. That will fight it more than anything else. Other ones, retaining spin with hybrids is an interesting one because there aren't that many. Strixon actually for spin maintenance isn't bad at all. Maybe not quite as high a launch. And again, for retaining spin, Cobra is an all-round head. They're really good too. But I think they've all got some adjustability as well. Yeah, the Wilson's pretty good overall, but those two tend to suit being played a little bit more like an iron, whereas something like GT1 is very wood-like. So depending on your delivery, you might find one's a little easier to strike consistently.
Philly Central, haven't seen you in for a little while. Was recently fitted for some P770s and with a KBS 120 shaft. Felt great, but from midway through a round, they feel heavy to swing. Should I have gone lighter? Great show, by the way. Thanks, Philly.
Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's, from what you've described, it sounds like that. Yeah, the weight on the back end of the set, back end of the round, is likely to be the issue. It doesn't need much of a change. It could have been that, say, an R plus in a 115 gram might have been the way to go. It's if you've been fitted on kind of full energy and someone hasn't taken into account the fact that there's 18 holes played, then yeah, that tail off is where it's going to be. It sounds like you've been fitted around your best swings rather than your average one, and therefore, unless you're on full pelt, just slightly hard work at the back end of the round. Yeah.
Simon asks, Stuart, what are your thoughts on the man and teaching methods of the Enigma Mac O'Grady, in particular the folding of the trail elbow, which Robert Rock is now promoting with his TRS slider aid? Look, Mac O'Grady had his way about things. I'm not going to suggest that it can't work, because there's a good few players that have gone down that route and been very successful. Look, if you can see the vision of the coach and you can buy into it, then go for it. Obviously a very talented man, and he had a good way of communicating his thoughts. Great. As far as the TRS that Robert Rock is pitching, again, you're sort of dining out on a golf swing that looks pretty, doesn't it? Robert's golf swing is a very pretty one. To think that a middle-aged man can tie something to his right arm and strap it in and make himself Robert Rock's next golf swing, I think is fairly short-sighted. I'm just not a fan of tucking anything or holding anything in. So it's not for me, but I'm sure it'll work for a lot of players, but not for me. Not my bag, that.
Mac O'Grady is very good right and left-handed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it could play like scratch golf, left-handed and right-handed.
Proper loon, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, loved it. Aerials Plus. Hi, gents. Looking for a 3-wood fairway shaft similar to my 7-wood. TP2, 14 high. I have a Ventus Black 7X at the moment, but tends to want to go left for me. The head is a TaylorMade QI 35 Tour.
If you've got a TPT that works well in your 7-wood, then we would generally match them through the fairway woods. So the 14, so with TPT, for those not familiar with the TPT shafts, they number them 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, with the higher number being the lightest. So the 14 is the heaviest one they do, and structurally the most stout. So if that's worked well for you, then you could put that in the 3-wood, or you might want to go to the 15 to make it a few grams lighter, but that's still going to be heavier than your Ventus Black. So if that works for you in 1 wood, then I would strongly suggest putting that into the other one.
Very good. Where was I? Simon. Jason Wen. Is that right? Yes. Oh, Jason Owens. It's been a long day. And I've been racing my little car at the weekend, and I am broken. I am broken. Golf clubs are important. Swing is important. Yep. But how much is positive mental thought process and knowing your abilities and course management? Well, I mean, I think they're important. But let me tell you, if you're standing on the tee and all you can see is slicing out of town because you've got a poor equipment or poor golf swing, I would go down that road first. Standing in a padded room and humming and thinking about the fairway is not the way to go. And I think it's just not the way to go. Yeah. I mean, if you have got a fairly sound action and some good equipment and you're not a complete nutcase on the golf course with strategy, you're going to go a long way in this game. You've got to have some really bad experiences that will be precipitated by poor technique or poor equipment. Again, I'm not a fan of, I saw Sports Sucks. I packed up golf ultimately at the time, I haven't got it now, with pitching yips. I couldn't pitch the golf ball. I've completely got rid of that purely by knowing technically what goes on. Couldn't be further from it. I went and saw guys up in Harley Street. I saw sports sites all over the world. not one of them got anywhere near the confidence it gave me on being on the back of better technique. So for me, sorry, it didn't work for me. But I'm sure it's worked for a lot of people. You know, top of the game, people trying to get across the line and winning. I think that's a different story. But I think for a club golfer that's playing 10, 12, 14 handicap, absolutely. Go to a course on strategy, you know, Mind Factor, what's his name? Can't think of his name, but talks about how to get the most out of your round strategy. Carl Morris, super idea. But for me, sports psychology for club handicappers, club golfers, I think is a bit of a black art, that run.
I agree. Ultimately, you'll get confident, you'll start to play better by getting your technique better and seeing good shots, and getting confident by knowing that what you can produce, even if it's a consistent fade or draw, or, you know, if you know what it's going to do, you can be comfortable at setup, knowing where your miss is. That's technique based, and then that, as you said, at the very top level, where they're looking for the minutest percentage left, when they've got the technique covered, then it becomes about belief and finishing it off, and, you know, like what Rory did on the 18th, made the eagle to get in the playoff. That's just total trust in what you're doing and clarity of thought. But technique and equipment are going to get you around a golf course much more than just seeing a good golf shot and putting poor technique on it.
Yeah, I agree. Nicholas P23, ever built irons for someone who, on the back of that last one, fortunately he says who chokes down on the grip, not who chokes, chokes down the grip. I'm 3/4 to an inch from the end, trying to figure swing weight due to counterweight at the top now. I figure I could test and use lead tape. Any experience on that?
So if that's something that you do and you're always going to do, then you don't try and change it, but you're still using the same tools to fit with, and you're still building to a spec. And so you're still testing the same way, but as long as the person is gripping to the same spot, you might use a grip that has a mark that gives a reference point to go, right, I know where I am. As long as there's consistency with that, you can build a spec. If there isn't, well, then you're kind of stuffed, aren't you? Because someone's changing the length and the swing rate every swing they make. But if you're consistent with where you grip the club, you still fit it the same way, you still build to the same measurements, but yeah, what I wouldn't do is I wouldn't go worrying about how much you're counterbalancing it with that, because the answer is absolutely bugger all. And there are layers of thought going to that don't need to be thought about. As long as the club, the dead weight and the swing weight and the build allows you to get consistent results, don't go thinking about that little piece of material that's up there. As long as it's consistent, then it's a constant, and therefore you can take account of it.
Good stuff. Mark Sweep. Good evening, guys. Good evening, Mark. Struggling a lot with my driver, DS Adapt IS. I get on so much better with my 3 and 7 wood. Would you recommend a mini driver, and if so, what one?
Not necessarily, and I don't know. The two answers. I think you could be not getting on with your driver because it might just be the wrong spec. Might not be your ability to swing a driver. It might just be the club isn't quite suitable for you. Could be the wrong length, could be the wrong shaft, could be the wrong swing weight. But it doesn't mean that that a driver is not for you. It could be a driver built at a 3-wood length. Might not have to be a mini driver. So there are lots of other layers to strip back before we go, right, ditch the driver and get something else. There are lots of options you can go to before saying, I'm not someone who can use a driver. It could be the club being the issue, not the player.
Hi Stuart, I was at, this is Richard Skinner, played at Royal St George's last week, and I got the chipping yips on the hard links fairways. It was embarrassing. Any coaching advice? Well, there's a few ways to get around the old chipping yips. First of all, take your putter out.
Yeah, on the links, yeah, you can do that.
Especially on the links, right? I think the links fairways, particularly in the winter time, it's a bit of a conflict. You play a links golf course in the summer and it's hard pan, and it's really difficult to sort of have problems with your chipping because the club bounces off, and as long as you're not miles in front of the ball, you're gonna sort of get away with it. But transition is the biggie with when it comes to chipping. You know, you've got a short swing, your grip is only going to be moving this much, and your club head is going to be moving this much. And unfortunately, what happens in the change of direction, when you start to get a little uncomfortable, the grip gets to move really, really quickly. And what happens is you create too much shaft lean, the club head lifts up, and all of a sudden you've got to now start to go down to it. Now you feel like your legs are giving way. Now you can't sense where the low point is. So a really great drill, and unfortunately, this takes a little bit of nerve to start with. But I think we forget this point, that short game, bunker shots, chipping, putting, you need nerve. I think when you stand on the tee and you hit an iron shot, you just stand there and think, well, I make a swing, I'm sort of moving at speed, don't need too much nerve. And I would sort of go along with that until you get to the last 3 holes where you're standing in the middle of the fairway and you've got a 7-iron shot that you didn't even think 2 hoots about 15 holes ago when you didn't have a score in your hand. We forget the fact to play the game well and get over the line, you need nerve. So when you're chipping and putting, if you went into it thinking, I need nerve, I need to man up here to a degree and get it over the line, I think we'd all be slightly better for it and slightly better prepared mentally. So when you're chipping, the change of direction, when the club goes light, that's so important to not make it feel like the club grip outraces the club head. So it feels like the change of direction, the grip and the head change direction at the same rate, because that way the radius of the club head to the floor will be very similar. As soon as you start to accelerate that club head, can you see how the club head comes up off the floor? So getting the change of direction to be as smooth as you can will really make the club head stay a bit more uniform with the track of the grip. And that's why tips like people talking about Jason Day and being very wooden and not using any wrist hinge at all, because it kind of locks the circle in with the club head and the grip. So I would say keep the grip light, but make the change of direction really, really soft and as slow as possible. But that's going to take nerve, and that's why I sort of precursor to that tip. You're going to need a little bit of nerve, especially if you've hit a few poor chips. To get over that, tee the ball up, put it on a small tee and just clip a few away, get some confidence back, get a little bit more softness in change of direction, and then lower the tee, keep lowering it and lowering it and lowering it, almost to the point where someone wouldn't know it's on a tee. You do though. And then once you get that low, just take it off the tee and back on the ground and sort of bleed your way in. And hopefully you'll overcome it. And one final thought on that, breathe. Think about some breath when you're chipping, and almost feel like your breath is almost dictating the softness in transition, because the yips is an uncomfortable thing. I've been there. It can petrify you. So take your time with it. Give yourself the best possible chance. And one final thought. Once you start chipping well, don't go and find the most difficult chip shot you can find around the green to take on. Do that after you've repeated good chips for about a month. Every single person I've ever helped with the yips with chipping, as soon as they hit about a dozen, 20, 30 great chips, they go, what about this one over here, Stuart? Hang on a minute. A moment ago, you couldn't have a standard chip. So take your time, and hopefully that helps, Richard.
Great advice.
Size 58 shoes. I mean, what a handle. I mean, that's up there with...
that's quite intimidating.
With the best of them. I mean, they're big feet. I did mean the 80, sorry. Oh, he's already asked the question.
Is that the hazardous?
Oh, yeah, that was size 80 shoes. He's the man from New Zealand.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah, you answered it.
Since the CB75.
Yeah, brilliant. Now I've lost where I am because I scrolled back up. Simon LT5MC. Would strong lofted irons with an extra 46-degree wedge be a good option for someone requiring a ½ inch under standard, i.e. the 7-iron goes close to the distance of a 6 for a regular lofted shot?
No. No.
Good answer.
In terms
I
of,
like that kind of answer.
because ultimately all your so strong. So all you're doing is you're just hitting a 6-iron instead of a 7. Isn't that what you? I mean, ultimately you want certain flight parameters to give you control when it lands. So just play an extra club. That's all you're doing. It's kind of if that makes you feel more confident, fine. But if you, I guess it'll help you go shorter without heavier headweights. Help you go shorter. So in principle, from that standpoint, it could. But yeah, you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're just affected by having 5 to pitch and a gap wedge. It's just 4 to pitch and another head. So depending on what, as long as the balance of distances makes sense and you haven't got clubs that duplicate one another or don't give enough of a gapping, then that can work for you. And if that gives you confidence, then fine. But realistically, all it is a different number on the bottom. So,
Okay, let's move on. CB Golf 94. Who should play a CB driver? My swing speed is low 90s.
Someone who's suited to a counterbalance shaft.
Perfect.
Simple as that.
Perfect.
And there's no way of saying X club speed, X height, left-handed, right-handed. It is just how you move will suit a particular weight and balance profile, but you only know by testing.
Lovely. Tony, by the way, hi Simon, bedding in my new Mizunos. Thank
Pretty
you.
set of iron heads. Those.
Thoughts on the GT1 and the QI35 fairways, please. Looking for a high launch, low profile, lowish spin, largest head, 3 or 4 wood, not ping.
So glad you had the last one. I mean, the GT1 Tour, it's not a shallower head profile, but it is going to be fairly good for spin, especially if you put the heavyweight at the front. It's got the bigger profile, and you know that will then get you the loft strong enough to not let it pop up too much. Essentially, the 15 degree really measures more like 16.5, 17, which is how they get the flight, part of how they get the flight. QI35, very good head, but will bring that spin rate down and launch down more. So it's really designed. It's much better low on the face than previous models, but generally better if you're really trying to strengthen the flight out and tend to trap it a bit more. GT1 will suit someone who picks it just that little bit more as well.
All right, Robin Morton, just setting up a sim room with Pro T VX launch monitor. Where would you position the swing cameras, e.g. in line with ball or hands? Great show, very informative. Keep up the good work. I would always line the camera up in between the ball line and your toe line. Give it a chest height. Golf ball line.
Sorry.
Not is
Childish.
ball line and toe line. So down the gap between the two, and then straight down the chest line. Again, camera pitched at your chest height. The reality is, keep it the same. Once it's set and it's the same all the time, as long as it's not silly angles, that's going to be close enough. Whether you go down your toe line or your club head line, matters not really, but just keep it in the same spot, which you're going to do because you're going to be mounting it. I hope that helps.
Enjoy the sim room.
Absolutely. Lucky man. PM Portella, what is all the hype about mini drivers? Who are these mini drivers for, really?
So the mini drivers have got a lot of hype, but actually the people they suit most are the really high speed players. So if you think about the product, it's a mini driver. It's not a fairway wood, it's a mini driver. And if you look at the players on tour using them, players on tour are using them, some of them, but actually the people we tend to fit them for are the really high speed players who hit the drivers 320 plus. And the mini driver is for attacking short par 4s or a tee shot strategy where it's more forgiving than a 3-wood, fairway wood, where you're not using it really off the ground. So they tend to be more for the high speed players looking for that more forgiving strategy call off the tee and maybe the occasional fairway wood shot. But that's really where they're geared at.
Tom Ashmore, evening gents. As driver is my nemesis, could you help with the drill to keep it more out in front of me, if anything? I pull hard in transition and get stuck with my blocks. So Nemesis could drill it more out in front of me. Getting it more out in front of me. It's such a trendy phrase. I mean, more out in front of me. What you're talking about is that the club head is getting underneath the grip. Now, getting the club head underneath the grip could be a club issue, right? Too heavy, doesn't suit you. So that's the first thing. When the club head gets stuck underneath the grip, you could be crossed the line. You could have a club face that's too strong. Principally, as soon as the club head's dropping underneath you, it is trying to fend off the left side of the golf course. And so then whacking it out the heel and blasting it right is normally on the agenda. So a good drill, should I say, is take the club in your lead hand and then cradle the golf club just below the rubber grip, and then put both hands underneath your shoulders. And then what you want to do is move your lead hand towards your left leg and make your right side work around. And what you'll start to feel is how your shoulders start to level off, because what you're feeling through strike is your lead shoulder lifting up and the club dropping back. So once you start to feel how your left shoulder starts to sit down and your right shoulder starts to square up, you'll start to feel like your right arm is doing way more work, and it feels like it's working the golf club around you. So you're now starting to square the club face up. At that point, you'll feel like the club head is now more over here compared to being this way. So by gripping it in this cradling with your right hand, don't allow the lead hand to move forwards of the leg, and just make sure that that right side moves around, because it will really start to square the face up and lift up the right side of your body. It'll give you a really good sensation of trying to square it up. But there's that would be just as kind of a maintenance drill. You want to go and look for what's the real cause of getting stuck up and under. That would be my advice to you. So go check out some material on my content on my channel, Good Golf Coaching. You should be able to find something there for you. Hope that helps.
You've done that before.
I've done that before. Whereabouts am I? Oh, there we go. Tony, by the way. P.S. Any chance of hitting the 2 in a Ventus red? We are 4 minutes to go. We'll do that next time, Tony. We'll do that next time. Keep the question, and we'll come back next Monday, and we'll absolutely do that for you. We're just running a little bit out of time there. Philly Central, thoughts on how to keep tempo? I often rush the downswing when trying to swing with some pace. Get yourself a metronome, set it on 55 beats per minute, and work up from there. First beep is away from the ball, second beep is at the top, and then give it 10-0 on the way down. When you're looking at the best players in the world, gathering it up and pulling at the right time is really important. Making sure that you feel like it arrives when you know it's going to arrive. That's really the problem when you're rushing from the top, not knowing when you're going to get to the top of your backswing. Hopefully that helps for you. Tractor Boy Dave, evening gents, pros and cons between the GT1 and the GT2, strong 3-woods, great as always.
So GT1's bigger, which some players don't like, but in principle is a higher launching head. GT2, probably not quite so good low on the face, but a slightly more compact head. So depending on delivery, if you hit down a little bit more, the GT2 is probably going to feel more comfortable. If you pick it a bit more, GT1 in principle is going to launch it a bit higher and might just appear more forgiving being slightly bigger.
S. Alderson, I240 or T150 going to pair with S300 shaft. Which would you prefer? Thanks.
I mean, from a shaft point of view, whatever works for you. Between the two, I240 will flight it just a little bit higher.
Evening gents, Will Robbins gives good course management advice, particularly for mid to high handicaps. Thanks for sharing that. Niall, hi guys, is there a big difference regarding spin between the QI35 core and the Ping G440 LST?
Core weight forward on the QI35 can actually be a little bit lower spin. So I would say LS probably, in that position, QI35 actually relatively off is probably a slightly slightly stronger flight, but ball speed, when it's good on the QI35, is likely to just beat the LST.
Doug, totally agree with chipping
Good
Stu.
question, though.
Totally agree with chipping Stu. Learning to wait for the clubhead revolution. My short game even goes with for putting. Absolutely. Mid handicap 50-72. Will Robbins, the scoring zone. Thanks for sharing that. Richard Skinner, Stuart, Simon, amazing golf instruction and golf product knowledge. Awesome show. Truly appreciate your advice and commitment. What a great
Thank you for
one
the
to
comments.
finish on.
Yeah.
And that's the hour. Thank you so much for watching. We are going to be back next week.
We are going to be back next
We're going to
week,
be back
yes.
next week. Old holiday boy over there, he's going to be with us.
He's probably been more
sporting
tan
his
next week
tan,
than he is
eh?
this week.
Are you going to start sticking on the old fake tan and make sure that lasts until about April? 2 fingers to you too.
Twice a week.
Twice a week. Lovely
Strictly
stuff.
tan, yeah.
Lovely stuff. Busy week in the studio?
Really busy, yeah. November's stayed really busy, which is great. So, yeah.
Fantastic.
All good fun.
Exciting. Loads of content coming out on both channels. Do go check them out. We really appreciate you hanging with us on a Monday evening, and we love all of your questions. Do come back next week, 6 p.m. We'll be here. Hope you are too. Have a great week.